I always believed that when I married Daniel, I was also gaining a second family, a home away from home, a set of parents who would treat me like their own daughter. For years, I held on to that hope, even when the signs showed otherwise. But what I didn't know then was that the people I trusted most after my husband would someday be the ones to destroy me from the inside out. When Daniel and I married, things were simple. We had a modest wedding, mostly funded by my savings since Daniel was still climbing his way up in his career. His parents, Thomas and Linda, were polite, but their warmth toward me always felt forced. They'd smile at me in public, but the moment we were behind closed doors, there was this cold, sharp air. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself I was overthinking, that adjusting to new in-laws just took time. It wasn't until our first year of marriage that I began to see cracks in the mask. One night, I overheard Linda speaking to Daniel in the kitchen. She didn't know I was just around the corner. Her voice was low, sharp, full of disdain. "She's not right for you, Daniel. She's not from a family like ours. She'll drag you down. You deserve someone who can give you more, someone who belongs in our circle." I froze. My chest tightened. But I didn't want Daniel to think I was eavesdropping. Later, when I gently asked him what his mother thought of me, he brushed it off. "She loves you, babe. You're just imagining things. You know how she can be, sharp-tongued sometimes. Don't take it seriously." So I tried not to. I swallowed my hurt, convinced myself that winning them over just needed patience and love. But things only got worse. Whenever we visited their home, Linda would make snide remarks about my cooking, my appearance, even the way I spoke. She compared me to Daniel's ex-girlfriend, who, in her eyes, was practically perfect. Thomas wasn't much better. He treated me like I didn't belong in the family at all. But the most painful part was how often Daniel chose to stay silent. He never defended me. He never stood up. His silence cut deeper than their words. Years passed, and I became numb to their little cruelties. I poured myself into making our marriage work. I gave Daniel everything: love, support, sacrifice. I even helped him when he started his own business, pulling from my savings to keep things afloat in the early days. But then the betrayal came, and it was nothing I could have ever prepared for. One afternoon, I got a call from the bank. They informed me that a large withdrawal had been made from my personal account, an account only I had access to, or so I thought. Alarmed, I rushed to the bank, and what I discovered left me shattered. My husband had taken the money with the help of his parents. When I confronted Daniel, he looked cornered but not guilty. "Babe, you don't understand," he said quickly. "My parents needed help. Dad made a bad investment, and they were drowning. I had no choice. I'll pay you back, I promise." "You had no choice?" My voice cracked, tears stinging my eyes. "That was my savings, Daniel. The money I set aside for our future. You didn't even ask me. They're my parents," he snapped. "Family comes first." That night, the truth came out. Linda called me, and, in a rare moment of brutal honesty, she told me everything. "You'll never be enough for him," she sneered. "You think Daniel chose you, but you were just convenient. We told him from the beginning you weren't the right one. Now, thanks to you, he's tied down. But at least you've been useful. You had the money we needed." Her words were venom, and they sank deep into my bones. I realized then that I had been nothing but a pawn in their world, someone they tolerated only because I had something they could take. For weeks, I lived in a haze. Daniel kept defending them, refusing to see the betrayal for what it was. My trust in him crumbled. I had loved him, stood by him, sacrificed for him, only to learn that he and his family had used me. The final straw came when I discovered that Daniel and his parents had secretly transferred the deed of our home into their name. The house I worked 2 jobs to help afford was no longer mine. It belonged to them. When I confronted Daniel, he didn't even deny it. "They convinced me it was best," he said weakly. "It protects us financially. You wouldn't understand." That night, I packed my bags. I walked out of the home I once dreamed of, out of the marriage I once cherished. For the first time, I chose myself. And as I left, Linda's words echoed in my mind. "You'll never be enough." But she was wrong. I was more than enough. I was just in the wrong family, tied to the wrong man, and betrayed by the people who should have cherished me. Now, standing on my own, I finally see the truth. Their betrayal wasn't my weakness. It was their shame. And while they may have taken my money, my home, and my trust, they will never take my strength, because I survived them. And survival, in the end, is the sweetest revenge. As I walked away from that house for the last time, a strange silence wrapped around me. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from release. For years I had fought for a family that never wanted me, poured love into people who only saw me as a means to an end. I rented a small apartment on the edge of town, just enough space for me and the quiet I desperately needed. The first few nights were hard. I cried until my chest ached. Memories of the good times with Daniel tangled with the bitter truth of his betrayal. But each morning, when the sun crept through my window, I felt a little stronger. Weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Daniel's parents had lost everything in another failed investment. Their home, their business, their reputation, all gone. And Daniel, who had chosen their side over mine, was left to pick up the pieces of their broken empire. For the first time in years, I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. I built myself back up slowly but surely. I found work that gave me independence, surrounded myself with people who value me, and promised myself I would never again sacrifice my worth for someone else's approval. Daniel called me months later, his voice desperate, asking if we could fix things. But the woman who once would have bent over backward for him no longer existed. I told him calmly, "No, Daniel, you broke something that can't be repaired. You betrayed my love, my trust, and my future. I hope you and your family find what you're looking for, but it will never be at my expense again." And with that, I close the chapter. Because sometimes the greatest truth we can expose is not just how others betrayed us, but how much stronger we become when we walk away. I was betrayed by my in-laws, but I was saved by the truth. And in the end, I didn't lose them. I finally found myself.